Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. In this video I will show you how to make this modified drop shoulder construction. This is a knitting tutorial and I hope you will join me to make this sweater. First, I want to talk a little bit about the construction of the back panel because this is the most important, or the construction of the sweater. This is a super oversized sweater. I did want it to make it as comfy as possible and to have a lot of room. But I will give you all the tips to be able to make this construction in any size that you want. So first of all, we need to think of the neckline, but pay attention before going to decide how many centimeters you will want for the neckline. I do believe that you need to decide on the bust circumference because we need to balance the proportions of every single piece of this sweater. So because I wanted a super oversized sweater, it will have like 120 centimeter circumference, then I will decide on the neckline according with the bust circumference. And here I will tell you the proportion. So I tested out on a different sweater in my daughter's size and it's working. So when you decide on the neckline circumference or the neckline width to start with for the back panel, neckline width at the back needs to be approximately 20% of the bust circumference. So first you need to decide on the bust circumference and then you'll calculate approximate 20% of the entire bust as a neckline width. Then we need to decide on the length or the depth of this back panel, meaning the increases and up to the armpit, and this will be also about 20% of the bust circumference. Now, of course, that you might use these proportions as a reference. You can always adjust the number of the proportion of your sections, but you will see that this armhole depth at the back panel, it will actually doesn't mean that your armhole depth or the armhole width or the sleeve width would be that big. After you have these numbers, then of course that you need to make a gauge swatch to see how many stitches and rows you have in 10 centimeters, and then you will transform this measurements into stitches and rows. So once you have the neckline width in centimeters, then of course that you'll need to increase until you reach the desired bust width. Take into consideration if you want to add some armpit stitches, because then you might need to have a little bit more. So I have approximately 57 centimeters over here, and my entire circumference will be a little bit bigger because I was adding armpit stitches. So then you will start increasing for at the beginning and at the end of the row, and once you reach the desired bust width, you should work the rest of the rows until you reach the depth of your armhole straight without making any increases. And then after you finish this section up to the armpit, you can go and build the neckline. So we will start to pick up the stitches from that shoulder line. Because I increased every other row, I had to pick up the same amount of stitches that I increased. So I was picking the stitches, one stitch and then one stitch skipping one row, meaning from the side row. So I was picking one stitch, then skipping one, and then I was working straight for 10 rows I think, and then 20 rows increasing every other row. This you can shape this as you like it. I now personally think that I had to increase less to leave a little bit more stitches in the middle of the neckline. Then after finishing the section with the neckline, you will go to work the other side and the other shoulder, and then cast on the stitches, the missing stitches from the front, and then continue to work the length up to the armpit. And then we will join in the round and beginning to work the length of the sweater. If you prefer to go and work with straight needles, then of course that you can go the entire back panel up to the end of the length, and then with the front panel the same. Then picking up the stitches for the sleeve, work the sleeve, and then in the end you will have to stitch the sides of the sweater. For the sleeves I went with a simple design without making any decreases. I only decreased on the last row of the sleeve and a little bit on the ribbing. Then we are working the collar. I use smaller needles to make this collar a little bit smaller, and let's begin. First, let me tell you about the wool that I used. I use Mohair Delight for the top and bottom, and for the stripes I used 2 strands of durable mohair, or maybe the brown color I will mix it with this wool. This will serve as well, and the idea is that you will need a medium weight yarn. Then as needles, I was using 5mm needles from Lantern Moon. But for the sleeves and collar, I use these mini needles. They are from Knit Pro Mini Bouquet. So now let's just begin working with our back panel or top back panel. But first I want to give you my numbers according with what I was measuring and calculating. So my gauge is 14 stitches and 22 rows in stockinette stitch using the 5mm needles. And for the neck width, I will start with 27 centimeters, which are about 38 stitches. Then I will increase for 42 rows every other row about 19 centimeters, and then for 14 rows I will work straight without having any increases. In total, all this section will have 25 centimeters, and at the end I will have about 57 centimeters, which are 80 stitches. So with this being said, if you have the same gauge as mine and you want to follow the same stitch count, then you can follow these numbers. And now I will cast on 38 stitches, so the number of stitches that I need for the neckline. I'm using the long tail cast on. For the first row, I will purl all the stitches because I do want to increase on the knitting rows. So I don't want to make an increase right into the first row because I don't have any stitches where I can place my increase, so that is why I will purl the entire row. If my purling is looking weird to you, this is the modified continental purl, if you want to call it like that. And that is why also when working flat I will knit the stitches in the back. So make it your way, you just need to purl the number of stitches on the first row. Okay, so now we are on the right side of our work. It's a knitting row and we will do the increases. So we will need to make one right and make one left. because you know that this stitches need to laying in a certain direction to look nice and beautiful. Now it's kind of difficult for me as well to figure out how to make the stitches every time. I did make a video explaining the make one left, make one right, but I have to admit that I do have to revisit it all the time, because if I don't know. So I will be using 4 stitches as selvage stitches, so I'm just knitting the first 4 stitches, and then we need to pick up the bar in between the stitches. So we see that we need this stitch to lay to the right, to go to the in the right direction. So I will pick up that bar and placing on the left needle to have that tight loop in the front, and then knit it to the front. And you see that the strand of yarn on front of that loop is to the right. Then we will knit all the stitches until we have 4 stitches left. And then we will increase again. Okay, I do have a few more stitches to knit. Now I have 2 stitches and I'm picking up the bar but making sure that the loop is tighter in the back, and I will knit this stitch in the back. Sorry. And then we will knit the rest of the 4 stitches. Now we will turn our work and we will purl all the stitches, and we will repeat the purl row without increases, the knitting row with those increases, until we reach the desired bust width. And this means for me 42 rows, but of course that for each of you, if you calculate it differently, then you should work as many rows as you wish until you reach the desired bust width, considering also that if you will add a few armpit stitches, then you will have to decrease those stitches for the width where you should get with these increases. And then we will meet at the end of the section to see how we will do and work further. After a few rounds, and I'm so sorry for that, I realized that I did the increases wrong. So actually we need to have M1 left at the beginning and an M1 right at the end. So basically we're switching the way that we are doing them. See that it's not that such a big difference, but anyways you can see that the last rows are a bit more neat. So I will show it to you one more time. So this is how the loop needs to go when we need a stitch to lay to the left, and this is what we need at the beginning of the row. And yeah, so this front strand is having the direction to the left, and with that one, the yarn that is front needs to be to the right. So at the beginning of the row we need to have the left one, so that is why we will switch the way that we are doing it. So see that we need that stitch to go to the left, and here we need it to go to the right. Yes, so we will do it again. I hope that this didn't make you ruin the sweater. So to make one to the left now, we will need to pick up that bar and place it on the left needle with the loop being tighter in the back, and we will need to knit that loop in the back at the beginning of the row and at the end of the row into the front. to knit it into the front. So let's start it again. So I knit the first 4 stitches, and now I will pick that bar in between and I will place it. So I'm picking it like this and I'm placing it on the left needle. So now the front strand is having the direction to the left, and then I am knitting it through the back. And at the end of the row, I will go and knit that stitch in the front. I don't know if this is because I'm knitting the stitches in the back loop, so you need to pay attention on that. I don't want to confuse you more. So now I'm picking up the stitch and placing it with the loop, not like this because it's in to the left. So I'm picking it from behind and knit it in the front, and in this way I will have this loop to the right. Okay, in the end I managed to finish this section, so I worked 42 rows. Now I do recommend to place a stitch marker into that last row, because when picking up the stitches for the front panels, it will be easier to know how far you should go or where to start the picking up stitches. So for one side, it's important to know how far you should go with picking up the stitches, and on the other side, it's important to know where you should start. And then we will continue straight without making those increasing at the beginning and at the end of the row. I will have to work 14 rows in total until I will reach the armhole depth, but of course you should work as many rows as you need for your length. So now just knit on the right side and purl on the wrong side until you reach the desired length or depth for this section, or for the top back. Yeah, and I will tell you one more time, this should be approximate 20% from the entire bust circumference, the one that you desire to reach at the end of the project. After I finished the 14 rows, and now I'm done with the top of the back panel, we should cut the yarn and now we will place the stitches on hold. Now I will be using a needle and a strand of yarn, and I will thread those stitches through that needle. But of course you can use a cable, you can use anything that you have on hand, or if you want or if you're working with straight needles, you should continue to work until you finish the length of the back panel. Now, so I will put the stitches on hold, and then we will begin to work on the front panels. After I put all the stitches on this strand of yarn, we will have to secure it, and I will tie a knot, but I will make sure that I will keep as flat as possible this piece over here. And just like this. And now we will begin our front panels, and I do recommend to start with the left one, because then when you will have to join, it will be easier not to break your yarn or cut your yarn twice. So we will begin with the left, and we will start to pick up those stitches from the shoulder. Now try to go as close as possible with the edge, but make sure that you have nice stitches over there to make it easier to know where to keep a straight line. And as I said, we need to pick up the same number of stitches that we increase with. So I will pick one and skip one, because I increased at every other row. If you want, you can also increase every row, and then of course that you should pick the stitches in every row. So I will skip one and pick one. Now, after picking all the stitches, and by the way, this will count as the first row, we will start to purl on the wrong side. So you have to turn your work and purl all the stitches. And we will work without making any increases for shaping this neckline, about 10 rows. If you want to go with your neckline a little bit lower, then of course then you can work more rows over here. After we finish with those 10 rows, I will begin to increase to shape the neckline. I will use this time 3 selvage stitches, so I will knit the first 3 stitches. And then I will pick up the stitch and knit it in the back. I'm still concerned if it's the right one, but yeah, you need to increase 1 stitch over there, and then we will continue to knit the rest of the stitches to the end of the row. We are increasing only at the beginning of the row, and the purl row will be without increasing, and we will continue to work 20 rows. I do believe that I had to work less rows, less increases to have more stitches in the middle of my neckline. I think it's looking a little bit weird over there, but yeah, for your reference, I worked 20 stitches, so I basically increased 10 stitches, 20 rows, sorry, so I increased 10 stitches on this side. And now on the wrong side we will purl, and we will keep repeating this 2 rows for 20 rows. So in total, at the point where we are finishing with the increases, we will have 30 rows in total. Okay, we finished with the left panel, we finished with the increases. And now we will have to cut the yarn, and I will keep the stitches on the needle. I don't think they will be incommodating me. You can put for safety one blocker at the end while you're picking stitches and working with them. And we will begin to pick up the stitches from the other shoulder. So here is the yarn with the label. I forgot that I had one with the label. So we will just start and pick up the stitches. That is why it was important to use those stitch marker to know which one was your last increase row, because now it's easier to know where you should start with picking up the stitches. And we will pick up the same with 1 stitch and skipping the next one. After we picked up all the stitches, we will turn and begin to purl, and we will work the first 10 rows without increasing. So we will have to work this second shoulder, mirroring the other. So now first 10 rows will be worked without making any increase. Now after I finish with the first 10 rows, I will have to work to begin to increase. So this time we will have to increase at the end of the row, so not at the beginning. So we will leave 3 stitches as silver stitches, and when we reach the last 3 stitches, we will begin to we will start to increase. And because it's at the end of the row, basically we will have to knit it in the front, I think. Okay, so let's knit the first stitches until we have 3 stitches left. Now when we are making the increases, I will pick up that bar in between the stitches, place it on the left needle to have that loop tighter in the front, and knit it in the front. And then I will knit the rest of the stitches. The wrong side row will be purl stitches, and then we will repeat these 2 rows until we have 20 rows or 30 rows, since we started the front panel. But of course that if you want deeper, more increases, less increases, then you should finish the section sooner or later, depending on your preferences. Okay, now I finished the right panel as well, and you will have to join it with the left panel. So now the easiest way is to count the stitches from your left and right panel, and in the middle you will need to cast on the remaining stitches to reach the number of stitches that you have on the back panel. So this is the easiest way. Or if you want, I increased with 10 stitches on each side, and I have 38 stitches for the neckline. So this means that 38 minus 20, I will have to cast on 18 stitches in the middle. So now we will begin from where our yarn is. That's why I said that it's better to start with the left panel, because in this way you can simply continue the row. And we will knit until we will finish this section. When we finish with this section with the right front panel, we will begin to cast on 18 stitches, or the number of stitches required to complete the number of stitches, to have the same number of stitches as the back panel. Now this is the method, the simple method that I'm using to cast on these stitches, to add those stitches. Of course, if you have a more advanced technique, then please use that one. And then after we will add those stitches, we will simply continue to knit the left front panel. Okay, where is my front panel? Okay, so now we will start to knit the front panel. Now again, here maybe we will have to twist a few stitches, so better to cast on with one more, because I made that there decrease to make sure that this will be connected and secure. So now we will continue to knit all the stitches to the end. So this is my 31st row from the entire front panel, and I will have to reach 42 with 14 is 56 rows. So this is my 31 row number, and I will have to reach 56, and I will continue to knit purl until I will have 56 rows, or the number of rows, of course, that you worked for the back panel. So you need to have the same number of rows. One more thing, when you're about to purl those cast on stitches, you don't need to be too scared if you have longer strands of yarn in between the stitches. So you will see that at some point that strand of yarn in between the stitches is getting longer, but keep it as closer as possible. The loops on the right needle or the stitches on the right needle, try to not make them that tight, and in the end it will look just fine. So you simply need to purl those stitches, and then again we should continue to go and work until we have the same number of rows as the top back panel. Okay, immediately after we finish to work the rows for the back panel, we need to join the front and back right now. Of course, if you are working on straight needle, just keep on going until you finish the length of the sweater. So now, right from where my yarn is, I will begin on my purl row to pick those panel stitches and put them on the needle. I was using such a thin yarn, so it will be a little bit difficult to pick them up, but yeah, it's doable. Okay, let's pick up those stitches, and then basically we will get at the beginning of the front panel. Okay, now we can cut that yarn that we used to put on hold the back panel stitches. And I'm trying to pull this yarn. Okay. And now I will have to cut the yarn because I will need to start. Yeah, you see that my yarn is left behind, and I will need to start from over here. Yes, so I think I could simply put them on the other needle, the stitches from the back, so not on that needle but on the other one, and now I move them back to get to have my working yarn in the right direction. So to begin with, we needed to put the back panel stitches on the other needle, not on the right one. So now I'm moving them on the other needle. Okay, so now our working yarn is where it should be, so we can start and work the first row of the body. So here is the armpit, and we will add a few chains or a few stitches at the armpit. So now we are just starting from the front panel, and we will begin to knit all the stitches of the front panel, and then at the armpit we will add a few stitches. I finished knitting the front panel, and now I'm about to start with the back panel, and I will add 6 stitches as armpit stitches. Of course, you can add more stitches if you need more. And then we will begin to knit the back panel stitches right away. Again, you can knit one more if you want to make that slip stitch over the first stitch. And we will continue to knit the back panel stitches, and then at the other armpit we will going to add again 6 stitches. Now I'm adding the 6 stitches for the other armpit, and after adding this 6 stitches, this will be the end of the row, and you can use a stitch marker to mark that and beginning of the row, because you will need that to know where the row starts and where the row ends. Now we will begin now to knit in the round, and I will knit one more row, and just after the second row I will go into the stripe pattern. So for the stripe pattern I used 4 rounds in each color. And as I told you at the beginning, for the stripes, I was holding together 2 strands of durable mohair. The lighter stripes are with lighter gray and light blue, and the other ones with the brown. So now I will cut this yarn and I will rejoin these 2 colors, so light blue and with light gray, and I will work 4 rounds using these colors, and then I will switch the color to the brown one and working again 4 rounds. I will keep the yarn, I will carry the yarn, so not cutting after finishing working with one color. And I will repeat and alternate these colors 7 times. So my last 4 rounds of the stripe section will be in the same gray and blue color. What is just happening over here? So I tried middle pull, but it wasn't, it was just a baby yarn over there. So yeah, so I will just keep knitting until I will finish this yarn, because usually this is how I'm doing it. If I have this is happening, I won't stop knitting until this yarn is finished, because otherwise I know that it will get tangled. So when joining the yarn, you simply go and grab your first stitch with the other yarn that you want to use, and we will continue to work in the round. After the stripe section, I continued with the dark blue color, and for the dark blue color I worked approximately 25 rows. So we will have 28 in stripes and 25 rows in the dark blue color at the end, and then we will add the ribbing. So I won't work with you the length of the sweater. Maybe you want to use stripes, maybe you work in the same color, you don't need to change the colors. So we simply go and knit in the round, and we will meet at the end to work the ribbing. Okay, so I finished to work 25 rows. So as I said, I alternated 7 times the stripe colors. The dark blue is the same yarn as the first one, and as the one that we used at the beginning, it's Hobbii Mohair Delight. Now, of course, that considering the desired length, you can work more rows if you want. And also, I will be using 4mm needles for the ribbing, because I want it to be a little bit tighter than the circumference of the sweater. So I will be using smaller needles this time. And elastic ribbing will be simple, so it will be 1 by 1 ribbing. So I will knit 1 and purl 1. Again, if my purling is scaring you, then because it's unusual, then you need to purl your stitches. You don't need to do it like I do, so you need to purl your way. This is the way I learned to purl in my childhood, and even if I tried to do it the other way, I don't know, this one feels I have a better tension, a better speed, so I'm always coming back to this one. So now just knit 1, purl 1. At the end of the row, if you have more stitches or 2 stitches before the end of the row, you should purl them together to finish with a purl stitch. And then we will repeat this row. I think I worked in total 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 rows in this ribbing pattern, and then prepare a crochet hook because we are about to bind off using a crochet hook. I finished 10 rows of ribbing, and now I'm using a 4mm crochet hook to bind off these stitches. You can use any other method if you want. This is not mandatory, but I do like how stretchy it is, how the stitches feels and look, so I don't mind using the crochet hook method. I tried Italian bind off several times, but so one time it worked, then I felt like I did the same thing and it didn't work the second time. So I give up for now on that technique, but maybe, who knows. And on a future sweater I will be using it again. So now I'm simply working the stitches with my crochet hook in the right hand as they are. So if it's a purl, I'm purling, and then passing that loop through the loop that I have on the hook. So this is how we are binding off the stitches. And a short fit check until we will start to pick up the stitches for the sleeve. Okay, I already worked one sleeve and we will pick up the stitches from the armhole. I work 20 rows in light blue, 28 with alternating stripes, and then again 25 with the dark blue. And then on the last round of the sleeve we will do some decreases. The rest of the sleeve is worked straight. Now for the sleeve I'm using a 5mm needles. These are from Knit Pro Mini Bouquet. I do love them and find it super easy to work in the round small circumferences, but if your wrist doesn't feel okay working with this small needles, then you should try a different method, maybe loop method, maybe double pointed needle, whatever you are used to work, what tools you are used to work to in a small circumference in the round. I'm preparing a stitch marker because we will have to mark the beginning of the row. I'm starting at the armpit, and the armpit stitches I will pick them up as they are, and I will go into every stitch. For the rest of the circumference, when I'm picking up from the side rows, I will pick up 3 stitches, skipping 1. This is kind of what I'm using whenever I'm working with a medium weight yarn and 5mm needle. It tends to be the same proportion, but if not, you will have to see the proportion that you have in between the rows and stitches and try to calculate which one is working for your tension. So I will be picking 3 stitches and then skip 1. Again, trying to go as closer to the edge as possible. And we will continue like this until we finish the entire circumference of the sleeve. After we finish picking up all the stitches, we are placing a stitch marker and we start to knit in the round. So again, I worked 20 rounds in the light blue, 28 rounds in alternating the stripes, 4 by 4 rows, and then 25 into the dark blue color. And after finishing the length of the sleeve, we will meet again because we will do some decreases. I also decrease a little bit on the ribbing because this time I was using the same 5mm needles for the sleeve cuff because I couldn't find the 4mm ones, the short ones, the smaller ones. So I didn't want it to size down even with another size. So I was working the elastic ribbing with using the same size of needles. Okay, so now I finished 25 rows and then now we will decrease, and I did another decrease on the cuff as well on the elastic. So for the first decrease round, I was knitting 3 stitches and then knit 2 together. So again, 1, 2, 3, and then knit 2 together. And we will repeat this to the end of the round as many times as it's possible. Maybe you don't have a multiple of 5 stitches on your sleeve circumference, so we will repeat it as many times as possible. Okay, we reached the end of the round, and now we will start to work knit 1, purl 1. I was telling you that I was making a few decreases on the ribbing as well, not quite a lot, only 2 or 3 times. I was decreasing at every 11 stitches, so not, but I was feeling that I do want it to be a little bit smaller. So we will knit 1, purl 1 this first round, and then we can make the decreases. At the end of the round, again, if you have 2 stitches to the end and you need to purl, then purl those 2 stitches together to make sure that you're finishing your round with a purl stitch. Next, we will work the second round, also knit 1, purl 1. So we will work 1 more round, and then we will decrease on the third round. Because I want to decrease on this, I will have to knit 3 stitches together. So either I'm slipping 1 stitch and then work the next 2 stitches together, and then I will flip that stitch over, and this is a way to do the decreases. Now that I made the first decrease, I will purl knit 11 times, and then we will decrease again. And so we will work 11 stitches in the ribbing pattern, then 3 stitches together, and needs to be a knit, purl, knit, stitch, those 3 stitches worked together. Now this is not mandatory, and you can wear the decrease either as I showed you at the beginning of the row, or simply knit 3 together. And after we finish with this decrease row, we simply go and work 10 rows or as many rows as we want for the thickness of our elastic ribbing, and then bind off. I will be using the same crochet hook as I did and the same method as I did for the bottom hem ribbing, but of course that you can use your preferred bind off method. And we will meet to make and work the collar. For the color, I will be using the brown mix of colors for the color, because this is the one that I have the most left, because from the light blue I have any, from the dark blue just a little bit. I don't think it will be enough for the color. For the color, I will be using 3.5 millimeter needles. I do believe that it will make it look nice and neat, but of course that you can use anything you have on hand. With a smaller size needle, it will be easier to have a narrower neckline. If you kind of had a wide neckline, using smaller needle we will make it a little bit smaller. Otherwise, you can make a few decreases along the first row in knit stitches, so you will be able to easily make a few decreases around. And I will start in the right corner of the back, and I will pick up the stitches from the back. You can go either in between or through the stitch. There are always different opinions about how you should pick the stitches for the collar to have a nice and continuous look of the stitches, but considering that we are using anyway a different stitch pattern, I think it won't be a problem. So I will recommend to pick up those stitches as it is easier for you. When we are picking from the side rows, when we are going on that side rows of the front panel, considering that we are using smaller needles, we can pick every stitch, but you can, if you're using a bigger needle, then you can do the same proportion as you did for the sleeves, picking 3, skipping 1. After we finish picking up all the stitches, we will place a stitch marker to mark the beginning of the row, and then we will start to knit 1, purl 1. Of course, we will be using the same ribbing pattern as the rest of the elastics. Again, work as many rows as you wish. I worked in total 8 rows this time. I didn't work 10 as the cuffs and the bottom hem ribbing. I thought that it would look nicer if I'm having a neckline a little bit thinner than the rest of the ribbings. And at the end, of course, I was using the same crochet hook method to bind off the stitches. But of course, you can use any method as you want. Okay, so to bind off the stitches, because I was using 3.5 millimeter needles, I will use a 3.5 millimeter crochet hook. You can use a slightly larger one than the needles, because you want those stitches to make them to be elastic and not fixed. If you don't want to use the crochet hook, here's how. So work the first 2 stitches, and then the first one you are simply placing it over the stitch that you just worked. It's kind of the same effect as the crochet hook, only that I found that using only the needles is a little bit more complicated and difficult. So that's why I prefer to use a crochet hook. to bind off the stitches. So again, I'm simply working the stitches as they are, always having a loop on my hook, and the stitch that I just worked, I will pass it through that loop on my hook. Okay, here we are at the end. I'm about to make a slip stitch into that first stitch that I bind off, then I'm making a chain to secure. And what we need to do next is to weaving all the ends, and I will place my sweater in the washing machine because I checked all the labels of the yarn that I will be using, and I can wash it into the washing machine, but I will use a wool program and only 20 degrees, the water really a little bit colder, so not cold but not warm. And I think this is it. I thank you so much for watching this tutorial. I really appreciate it, and see you in the next one. Bye.